Hi, folks, and welcome to Operation Opposition, a podcast addressing topics the mainstream media would rather ignore. I'm your host, Katrin, an anti-human trafficking advocate, and I couldn't be more thrilled that you're here. Operation Opposition was created with the intent to discuss all things by myself and our guests, the good and the bad, without the agenda that most media platforms like to push, or the pointless celebrity gossip that, frankly, nobody cares about. As a precursor, due to the topics we'll be addressing, I would like to issue a parental advisory. Today, we'll be delving into a topic everyone loves: money. Specifically, following the bloodstained trail human traffickers have left behind in pursuit of the dollar sign. For those of you who aren't familiar with human trafficking, I would recommend that you listen to episode 1 first. Let's get into it. In 2017, the Global Financial Integrity Group delved into a fun topic: illicit markets, and how much each area they researched garnered. First up, we have counterfeiting, estimated to be worth around 1.3 trillion worldwide. Next is drug trafficking, with an estimated worth of $652 billion. Next is illegal logging, which is worth up to $157 billion. Human trafficking is worth more than $150 billion. As interesting as the other illicit markets sound, I'm no counterfeit expert. Or maybe I am because my FBI agent is probably listening to this. Who knows? What I'd like to focus on is the how and the why of human trafficking being worth more than $150 billion globally. Unlike the other crimes listed, human trafficking has the word human in it. It's the only crime listed that directly involves the selling of and profiting from enslaving and buying individual people. Keep in mind, these statistics were published in 2017. The sad reality is that human trafficking and many of these other illicit economies are worth more today, especially if we adjust for inflation. But unlike my bank account, $150 billion is still an astonishing number. For the record, Guatemala, Bulgaria, Ethiopia, Luxembourg, Panama, and Jordan all make less than that, according to Worldometer. This means that human trafficking is a more lucrative crime than what some countries earn annually. But which locations are these numbers coming from? Let's take a look. The International Labor Organization found in 2022 that in cases of labor trafficking, Asia and the Pacific scored highest, with more than half the global total at 15.1 million people in forced servitude. Europe and Central Asia are next, with a total of 4.1 million people. Next is Africa, with a total of 3.8 million, and the Americas, with 3.6 million people. The Arabic states had a total of 0.9 million. However, according to the International Labor Organization, but this regional ranking changes considerably when forced labor is expressed as a proportion of the population. By this measure, forced labor is highest in Arab states, 5.3 per thousand people, followed by Europe and Central Asia, 4.4 per thousand, the Americas and Asia and the Pacific, both at 3.5 thousand, and Africa at 2.9 thousand, end quote. Does that mean that these countries' governments are directly profiting from and encouraging slavery in itself? Not according to the International Labor Organization. 86% of forced labor cases are imposed by private actors, 63% in the private economy in sectors other than commercial sexual exploitation, and 23% in forced commercial sexual exploitation, end quote. But does that mean, however, that the private sector of human trafficking simply flourishes on its own? Or do predators purposely look for legal loopholes provided by lenient governments? Cease.org, an anti-human trafficking organization based in the UK, has an interesting article addressing this topic. Much like any other market, the commercial sex industry is driven by demand, and the demand for transactional sex is highest where the sex trade is legalized and decriminalized. For example, the liberalization of Germany's laws on prostitution over the past 20 years has led to a doubling of women in the sex trade. The market is now dominated by mega brothels, which offer sex on an almost industrial scale, often to tourists, many of them bussed in from abroad, end quote. For comparison purposes, Germany also has Europe's highest gross domestic product, according to Worldometer, despite having less people than Russia. According to Time magazine, in an article titled "Germany Has Become the Cut-Rate Prostitution Capital of the World," written by Brad Tuttle in 2013, prostitution became legal in Germany in 2002, and the open sex trade has taken off in the years since. There are reportedly around 3,000 red light establishments in the country, and 500 brothels in Berlin alone. It's been estimated that more than 1 million men pay for sex in Germany every day, end quote. One thing I just learned from this, and I'm now unsurprised by, is why the Thai monarch chose Germany to reside in with his harem of concubines. I think this finding and his residency there might be correlated, but who knows. Let's continue. The European Union Policy Department for Citizens' Rights published a study in 2021 that states, opportunities for organized criminal activities may be inadvertently generated by legislation. Certain types of regulation may facilitate criminal activities by making a given legal or illegal market more vulnerable to organized crime. In this sense, legislation may involuntarily create crime waves. In a quite homogeneous area like the European Union, organized criminals, who tend to act rationally weighing costs and benefits of their actions, can easily shop these national legislations that facilitate their criminal activities by making them less difficult, less risky, more profitable, and rewarding, end quote. Furthermore, the study also stated that different national laws on prostitution may fuel the trafficking of persons for sexual exploitation in some member states because some models of policy on prostitution can unintentionally produce more victims of sex trafficking. That is to say that some countries of the European Union may attract more trafficking flows for the purpose of sexual exploitation, end quote. There seems to be a correlation between cities, states, and countries that have lenient laws regarding prostitution, though sex trafficking is found within most countries. For those that implement laws catering to sexual demand, higher rates of brothels and sex trafficking seem to follow. An example here in the US would be Nevada, the only state where prostitution is legal. The Nevada legislature estimated that the Nevada brothel industry makes anywhere from $35 to $50 million annually. As of 2022, Carson City, Nevada state capital, has a population of 58,000 people. Las Vegas has a population of 641,903,000 people. Comparatively, Phoenix has a population of over 1.6 million people, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Despite being a neighboring state to Nevada, prostitution is illegal in Arizona. Though prostitution does exist, even in states that outlaw it, Nevada has more brothels and strip clubs than Arizona and Utah. A 2020 Senate bill report titled Senate Bill 293 report, prepared by Esther Rodriguez Brown, stated, in 2018, the Human Trafficking Initiative published Nevada's online commercial sex market, which examined advertising on Backpage.com, a leading classified website and the largest marketplace for buying and selling sex. The study found that in 2016, Nevada led the nation in the number of sex providers per capita. Based on descriptive language in ads, it estimated that 19% of Nevada's sex providers were likely younger than the 18 years of age required to advertise, putting Nevada among the top states in terms of the number of young sex providers. These young sex providers were more than twice as likely to have indicators of drug use than older sex providers, and at higher risk of having been trafficked. Buyers paid more for young sex victims, suggesting a higher demand by both buyers and traffickers, end quote. Though Backpage was mentioned in this report, it has since been thankfully shut down. Based on this report, however, it seems Nevada's legalization of prostitution has resulted in higher child sexual abuse cases due to predators exploiting children through legal loopholes and buyer demand. But Nevada isn't the only state within the U.S. that struggles with this problem. According to Statistica.com, the United States is the world's largest exporter of pornography. An article in 2013 found that 60% of online porn came from the USA. But what percentage of this pornography is tied to sex trafficking? Well, in a separate study in 2015 by Thorne, in partnership with Dr. Vanessa Boucher, found an alarming data set. This study surveyed 111 sex trafficking survivors across 11 cities in the U.S. They found that 63% of the underage survivors had been advertised for sexual services online. The following is an excerpt from the study. The interview reports provide information on the process of posting the advertisements online, including who posts the ads. The findings suggest that the controllers post the ads more often than the victims. 18% of victims report that they only had posted their own ads online. 56% of victims say only the controller posted the ads, and 17% report that both they and their controller posted the ads, end quote. But where are some of these ads being published? Among those that report being advertised online, Backpage is the most common website used, with almost half reporting they were advertised on Backpage. Craigslist and Facebook were the second most popular websites for advertising, end quote. Facebook ads, according to Shopify.com, run about 69 cents per ad, which increases to $9.88 per 1,000 impressions. Ad posting on Craigslist, except for real estate, is free. Given that 63% of underage survivors had been advertised online on platforms like Facebook and Craigslist, what about within the porn industry itself? In 2017, the Polaris Project found that 60% of sex trafficking survivors within the U.S. porn industry were minors. And just a heads up, feel free to skip a few seconds ahead, because this part is gross. Younger respondents reported that advertisements sometimes used words and phrases that signaled their age, including fresh meat, young, virgin, prime, coochie, shaved, non-pro, new, barely legal, 18, college student, girl, lovely, daddy's little girl, sweet, 1986 Firebird, new in the life, liked girls, youthful, and fantasy. Others of those interviewed said that they did not use keywords to communicate their age because most people who are going to pay for sex don't care how old you are, because actually the younger you are, the better it is for them. The younger you are, the more money it is, because innocence, and that's what everybody wants, end quote. Research findings from Dr. Kimberly Coltra found that domestic sex minor trafficking, otherwise known as DMST, is more present within the United States than once thought. Although more accurate approximations of this phenomenon are expected, data on the age of entry into commercial sexual exploitation, including prostitution, do exist. On the basis of research from 2 studies, at least 70% of women involved in prostitution were introduced into the commercial sex industry before reaching 18 years of age. The average age at which children are being lured into commercial sexual exploitation is between 11 and 14, although some are as young as 5. In a videotaped interview, one former DMST victim stated, "We're all under 18. We're all the same age. There would be a few girls I knew who were in their 20s or whatever, but they were doing it since they were our age anyways. I did wait till 12, and these girls had been doing it since they were 8 or 9, and now they're like 23, end quote. Let that sink in. Although Backpage has been shut down, other popular sites for posting these ads include Pornhub and Xvideos. A study analysis published by the National Library of Medicine, titled A Descriptive Analysis of the Types, Targets, and Relative Frequency of Aggression in Mainstream Pornography in 2020 found this study of 4,009 heterosexual scenes from 2 major free pornographic tube sites, Pornhub and Xvideos, sought to provide this baseline. Overall, 45% of Pornhub scenes included at least one act of physical aggression, while 35% of scenes from Xvideos contained aggression. Spanking, gagging, slapping, hair pulling, and choking were the 5 most common forms of physical aggression. Women were the target of the aggression in 97% of the scenes, and their response to aggression was either neutral or positive and rarely negative. Men were the perpetrators of aggression against women in 76% of scenes, end quote. But Pornhub and Xvideos aren't the only porn sites in the US. Though Pornhub and its parent company, MindGeek, made $97 billion in 2022, their contender, Onlyfans, made $5.6 billion in 2022. Despite OnlyFans' popularity, especially with Gen Z and millennials, with a whopping 455 million visits to the site in 2024, it's not all sparkly emojis, kissy faces, and peaches. The Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative published a web article titled Onlyfans, a Paradise for Pimps and Predators, and found this. The Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative, in consultation with veteran law enforcement officials, recently published a report which revealed strong indicators of child sexual abuse material and sex trafficking on OnlyFans. The data for this report was collected from November 2021 to March 2022, a date range that occurred entirely after MasterCard's policy changes came into effect. ATII stated that within 1.5 hours, their researchers found a high volume of OnlyFans.com profiles possessing commonly understood indicators of CSAM, child sexual abuse material, and or sex trafficking. Examples of what they found include pictures of girls whose appearance and body types suggest they are underage, accounts advertising with terms and descriptions that commonly denote CSAM, conversations between potential sex traffickers discussing how they like to use OnlyFans to monetize their victims, and creators sporting signs of abuse and coercion, such as bruising, tattoos known to be used for sex trafficking, expressions of pain, blank gazes, and signs of being under the influence, and much more, end quote. Also found on the Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative is this quote: Human trafficking detective Joseph Scaramucci and the Avery Center for Research and Services analyzed a sample of 97 public Instagram accounts of OnlyFans creators for indicators of trafficking. 36% of these accounts were classified as likely third-party controlled. This research project also included a survey of former or current creators on OnlyFans. Of these creators, 11% said they had been solicited by suspected traffickers, 6% disclosed that traffickers had had a hand in creating and marketing their content, and 11% said they were aware of minors who had accounts on OnlyFans, end quote. Lena Nealon, the writer of this Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative article, wrote the following. A recent New York Times piece describes how OnlyFans has led to the flourishing of online pimping. The tone of this piece is chillingly casual and uncritical, essentially describing this phenomenon as the new frontier of business. Jason Rosero, a pimp who was interviewed for the piece, stated, OnlyFans is a true opportunity for not just sexy girls, but also guys as well. What I'm proposing here is e-pimping. The New York Times speaks to how these pimping businesses take tremendously steep cuts from OnlyFans creators' earnings, as much as 70%. As OnlyFans itself takes a 20% cut from all creators' earnings, this would leave a pimped individual to survive on as little as 10% of his or her income, end quote. This paints a rather bleak picture of the sparkly, blushing image OnlyFans tends to portray. Given that they made $5.6 billion in 2022, it's important to examine how much is the porn industry worth in the United States. According to Statistica.com, the porn industry in America in 2023 made over $1 billion. Quartz, a news media outlet, estimated the porn industry to be worth anywhere from $6 billion to $15 billion in America alone. We've discussed that globally, human trafficking is worth over $150 billion. In 2014, the International Labor Office estimated sex trafficking to be worth $99 billion globally. Keep in mind, those numbers are from 2014. Given that sex trafficking is an underreported crime, it's likely higher. In fact, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime reported in 2018 that the top countries of origin of federally identified victims of human trafficking were the United States, Mexico, and the Philippines. This honestly seems unsurprising. If the US is, after all, the largest exporter of sexual content, it is not surprising to learn that thousands of victims of human trafficking, especially sex trafficking, are within the United States. Besides pornography, the top businesses where sex trafficking is prevalent include illicit massage parlors. In 2018, Polaris found that these businesses made $2.5 billion in the United States. Polaris also estimated that in 2018, there were at least 9,000 illicit massage parlors across the country. According to Polaris, someone looking to purchase commercial sex from an illicit massage parlor can log in to any number of review boards and, sometimes for a small fee, get graphic descriptions of individual women's bodies and specific sexual experiences with those women, end quote. Victims of massage parlor trafficking are often Chinese or South Korean, speak little to no English, and usually only have obtained a high school diploma, according to Polaris. But the numbers of illicit massage parlors in the US are likely far higher. Polaris notes, irony aside, the fact that the United States is among the easiest countries in the world in which to hide who actually owns and benefits from a business is part of the reason why massage parlor trafficking is so difficult to prosecute criminally. There are legitimate reasons why some businesses use anonymous shell companies, and there is no reason why they cannot continue to do so. But if we are to end human trafficking in massage parlors, we must begin by lifting the veil of secrecy that protects the criminals who profit from it, end quote. Polaris examined the data behind the 9,000 illicit massage parlors they investigated. Within this same finding, they found that only 28% of these parlors had an owner's name listed on the business registration. Other areas in which human trafficking is prevalent in America include agriculture, domestic work, health and beauty services, construction, factories and manufacturing, and healthcare, all according to Polaris. Added together, we can begin to see how human trafficking is worth over $150 billion worldwide. Though this is a heartbreaking and complicated topic, and human trafficking is a dark world filled with dirty money, there is hope for survivors. We'll be discussing the impact of individual survivors and nonprofits on a later episode. Thank you so much for listening today. We'll be releasing new episodes every Monday, so stay tuned. Given that this is kind of our maiden voyage, I would like to give a special shout out to God and to my love, podcast editor Kurt, our parents, as well as my friend Carly. Thanks to all of you. I already can't wait for next week. See you then.